Okay, so I'm here with Joe and Claire from Rhotic Media, and they are proud to offer apprenticeships. So, how about you tell us a little bit about yourselves, who you are, and what you do, and tell us about Rhotic?
Okay, I'm Joe. I'm the founder and CEO of the company. The company is a financial marketing, financial media agency. We've been going for around about 6 years, and during that time, we've been operating degree apprenticeships, among other programs for junior talent, for about 4 years. I wouldn't go so far as saying we're an old hand at it, but we've certainly done some significant learning during that period.
Fantastic.
I'm Claire Hone. I joined Rhotic in September last year. I do account management, so I look after Rhotic's existing clients, looking after their day-to-day needs, making sure that the content is delivered on time, queries, and just maintaining that relationship and growing their business.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So, I'd love to know what motivated you to want to offer apprenticeships at Rhotic Media.
Yeah, it was. So one of our founding principles is that a frustration, I guess, from myself and also from many of the early employees of Rhotic. I think me and Liz, the other director, sort of got together, and we'd all worked for companies large and small, who had programs to sort of stimulate awareness about various different problems in diversity and inclusion. But the money that was sort of spent on these education programs wasn't always directed to actually finding an answer. And as we started to think about what we could do as we started to grow as a business, one of the obvious solutions which was staring us in the face was degree apprenticeships, for reasons that I'm happy to come on to. So we started looking into how viable they would be in terms of the recruitment programs that we could offer and the positions that they would fit with that we needed filled within the business. And we looked at the various different aspects of funding. And then over time, we've sort of evolved our thinking so that the apprenticeships that we now run are fully integrated in the business. And Claire can speak about how we work with them, but it's very much the case that they're no longer sort of offered as, here's the apprentice program, here's everyone else in the business. The degree apprentices that work at Rhotic are very much sort of core to the workforce. So it's a very long-winded answer to say that we wanted to try and do our bit to solve an industry headache where representation of other has been poor for a long time. And one of the ways of doing this was through degree apprenticeships, and that's where we are today.
All right, thank you very much. And so perhaps you could share with us how many degree apprenticeships you're currently hosting, and tell us about the programme. What does it look and feel like?
Yeah, so we have an intake in January. Sorry, no, we don't. We have an intake in August every year. We advertise in January or February time. At sort of, it usually coincides with Apprenticeships Week, where we start the recruitment outreach to say this is the programme. And it depends very much on what that year's intake looks like. So in recent years, we've taken 2 individuals on each intake. The most recent one was on the Rhotic Media Financial Journalism pathway, where those individuals come in and they work on our own media product, which is Financial Promoter. So they will work on the magazine, the website, and the conferencing event. But then they will get rotated around the business. So degree apprentices that we've had previously who've gone through that scheme will do 6 months working on editorial projects for clients. They'll do another 6 months working on corporate projects for clients, and so on and so on. There's various different rotations that they go through. And at the end of it, the idea is that by the end of year 2, we can sit down with them and sort of review their portfolio of work that they've achieved to that point and say, okay, you've got 2 years of experience under your belt now. Where do you think you want your career to head? Because a lot of young people coming in obviously aren't aware of the opportunities that are available to them. And because they've been rotated 4 times, or 4 times at that point, they're able to sort of talk a bit about the work that they've enjoyed, and where they think that might lead in the future. And what we try to do is then look at the business need at that point and then say, okay, well, here's what we can offer you that's the closest to that. So what happens then is in their final year, so the last 3 semesters from the university towards their endpoint assessment and going to Gateway, they will then start working on projects that are much more specific to that job role that they want at the end. So having done the rotations where they've done a bit of everything, they start to focus in that final year. And that sets them up superbly well to become full-time employees at the end of it.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And so it's a 3-year program. And how does it work with the study component?
So the Rhotic Media scheme, we say you have to do 3 days that are work-based. You have your 1 day that's earmarked for university every week, but we also do a paid study day as well. So there is no work that is scheduled on an individual's calendar for that day. It's purely to focus on the work that they do from university. So it might be doing assignments, it might be doing research related to assignments, but equally it might be sort of non-academic work, or building your network, doing clubs and societies with the university, getting involved in non-assignment based programs that the university offer, because we also recognise that one of the shortcomings and one of the things that are most challenging for individuals who are coming into our industry from a non-traditional background is they don't have a network. So having some time where people can use that time to build their contact book and to go and meet people and socialise is actually a really big part of making sure that they are able to have success within financial services marketing and in business more broadly in the future. And it's something that I think apprenticeship programs could do a lot more of.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And of course, there is government support available for programs such as these. So could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not necessarily appreciated how much support is on offer. So if you're a smaller business, then there is the opportunity to have access to a lot of degree apprenticeship or apprenticeship courses at a fraction of the price that an individual would normally pay for them, because the government does subsidise that quite heavily. So I think, and I need to check because it's been some years since I've looked at the detail, I think it's if your turnover is less than 3 million. It was last time I looked. It might have changed since then, but it used to be that 3 million was the cutoff of, as long as your turnover is less than that, then you qualify for significant discounts. And we're talking, I think it's something like 90% of the course fee is covered by the government subsidy, and the employer makes up the rest. And if your revenue is over that amount, so say you're a massive global bank or something, you're already paying an apprenticeship levy, which you have to by law. And the idea with that is that you've already committed that spend. Therefore, because you're already having to pay it, the government is hoping you will then use that to bring in talent through degree apprentices and apprenticeships and apprenticeships. And incredibly, a lot of companies, despite having paid in that amount, just see it as a sunk cost and then don't go and use that levy. We would say that you're missing a trick and there's a huge opportunity. The flip side of that, of course, is as the employer, even if you take the subsidy that's available or you've already committed that spend in levy, you do then have to employ the person. So you do have to commit for that 3 years to paying a salary in full. And obviously that is where some employers choose to not do so, because they feel that that's too much of a financial commitment for that period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. So I've got to ask, this is obviously a financial investment and also a time investment. So how do you align the apprenticeship standards with your commercial business objectives?
Yeah, so obviously there are the apprenticeship standards that we have to look through, and we do portfolio reviews with the apprentices to make sure that they are achieving their relevant knowledge, skills, and behaviours that are required to achieve each apprenticeship standard, depending on which apprenticeship standard it is that they're following. But what their work looks like day to day, while it's serving those KSBs, obviously they're on an apprenticeship which is aligned fully with the work that they do day to day. And this might be a good opportunity for Claire to chime in and talk about some of the work that our apprentices do, because Claire, you see them in the office. I mean, they're just part of the team.
To be honest, you sort of, from coming in only in September, and the apprentices that are here have already been here for some time, it's like they're full employees. I forget that they're actually apprentices at the end of the day, because each of those that have done it, even Megan and Evie, who are relatively newer this year, last year, they're part of the team. They're very integrated as in the team already. They're already writing articles. They're given so much more responsibility as part of the actual job itself. I noticed they're not just, my impression of apprenticeships would be they'd be given the admin work and it's sort of the easy stuff to do, where they don't at all. They're fully integrated into the role itself. And they're doing marketing, is fully in the marketing role. We're setting up a live event and organising it all. So it's like they're full employees. They're out writing articles. They're being published by our clients. It's you have to remind yourself that they are apprentices at the end of the day, and outside of working, they're also doing their studies and working towards their degree.
So it sounds like they're doing meaningful work, which is having a positive impact on the business and the bottom line.
Yeah, massively. They sort of help in. I mean, as Jo said, they're doing all the different modules. So I work with them in different sort of areas than Jo. Jo's obviously working towards what the modules are and helping them sort of towards their degree. I do it just from a work perspective. So I deal with those that are actually writing, doing that side of things, for those that are doing the marketing with the live events. So it's like they're fully doing the role, and that they've already sort of passed through. They're doing great.
If you look at Neve and Ella, who are sort of our sort of final year degree apprentices at the moment at level 6, they come through level 4 and level 5. If you look at the what's in the apprenticeship standard and the knowledge and skills they're supposed to have acquired by this point, not only have they got, because they've been doing this meaningful work that Claire speaks about, whether that's writing articles, doing audience research, getting to understand the products and services that the business offers, doing sort of horizon scanning about major issues that might impact our clients or might impact us as a business. They've got all of those skills, which are ticking off all of the knowledge and skills that they're required to have. And they've got the evidence in their portfolios because they've been doing the work. But more than that, I think when they get to the end of their level 6, which is only 5-6 months away now, they're going to have a full understanding of a sector that's been built up over 3 years. Now, my experience at university, despite the fact that I was working while I was at university, was very different. I came out and I'd been educated about here are the topics from textbooks, but then I had to apply it. And that application then took 3 years after, as I started to learn to apply the theory that I'd learned. The difference with the people that have come through our program is they've been doing that and applying it as they've learned it. So when they're sitting there and they're doing their SWOT analysis or their pest analysis or whatever, they're already applying that either to Rhotic Media or to Rhotic Media clients, so that they're putting together strategies which are meaningful and tangible, and are helping to generate revenue or to support the commercials of either us or our clients.
And I think also the skill set of just dealing with clients, having that confidence that they're some of the clients that you're dealing with, heads of marketing, we've got fund managers, all the different clients that we have, and they're young people and they're dealing with these. And after the 3 years, the confidence and the skill sets they get within client services by doing something like this. Where I think university, where you're not dealing with that sort of side of things, you've then got to gain that experience after you've got your degree, while they're gaining that naturally whilst in the role.
Yeah, it's a great approach, isn't it? Because they get to not only earn as they learn, but they get to apply as they learn. So it's a really great initiative. And I really think it's testament to, if you're able to have degree apprentices who are driving positive outcomes and delivering meaningful work, I do think that's testament to the program that you've designed, because you have to, as an organisation, empower these young people to be able to do that, and so it's obvious that it's really working at Rhotic Media.
Yeah, I think what I will say, Joe, is from the employer side, you have to. So in the time that we've been doing it, we've learned that it's sort of the stages of learning are almost tiered, not with the academics, but you see the penny dropping with the academics being applied commercials. So I'd say, I think I've said this before when I've done discussions about apprenticeships. First 6 months, it's very much immersed and sort of learning the basics of the business and the basics of the theory and that sort of thing. And then the people that are working on that initial, let's say level 4, which would be one of our intake levels, they suddenly have that light bulb moment where the two come together after about 6 months, and they go to the next level, sort of metaphorically speaking, and suddenly they become commercially generative and able to drive revenue and able to support the business. And then that takes along for a bit further, and then suddenly there's a massive leap up again. It's not the same as academic learning, where you have this sort of spiral of learning. If they learn a bit more, then they go up, and they learn a bit more, and they go up. And it's not like that in the business world. They have massive leaps and jumps as they get to grips, and the skills that they've acquired, they've applied, and they go, oh, I've got that now. And then they can do it again and again and again. And I think employers need to recognise that, yes, you do have to invest some time and some resource and some effort. It does take effort. If you don't put the effort in, you won't get it out the other end. But if you do, the rewards to the business in terms of commercial output, but also in terms of corporate culture, are absolutely enormous. And I can't get my head around the larger employers that choose not to adopt this pathway, other than to think they think it's a cost and there's no reward. And trust me, we've seen that there are huge rewards to be gained off the back of it. And I'd urge other people to look at it. I mean, Claire, you've seen our people. What's your view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they come out with it with such a maturity that they're ready to go out to the marketplace. I mean, obviously, the end game is, I'm sure Joe, owning the company, would like to keep the apprentice at the end of it. You'd like to sort of keep the staff, but that's obviously no guarantee at the end of the day. But it's a reward you get from bringing somebody in, gaining all that experience, getting the qualification at the end of it, and 3 years of experience in the city. I mean, the city is such a big place. It's for a young person coming in and having those 3 years exposure. I think that's the most important thing, what you get out of it. Well, you can teach. I always think with apprenticeship, you can teach education, but teaching the life skills of talking to some of these very experienced, very mature fund managers and investment people, it doesn't come naturally to everybody. I've seen, just from the 4 or 5 months of being here, the experience and the maturity that all of them have already. That they just get from day to day, talking to people when they're writing, dealing with these fund managers on the phone, organising stuff, arranging events, talking to different companies, organising stuff, talking at senior level, and they're all comfortable with it because they've had the tools to take with them.
Yeah, and of course, to get comfortable operating at that level takes practice, and they're getting the practice now rather than in 3 years' time. So
which is
Yeah.
very daunting for someone. It's very intimidating, actually. I think for a young person, it can be really intimidating.
Yeah.
They're not, as Joe said, they're not thrown into it. They're sort of
Yeah.
nurtured sort of through it. But your plan is for when you finish your apprenticeship that you have all of these skills as well as the academic, as well as that degree at the end of it. It's all the other parts, I think, that count. And I can see it massively. I've never worked for a company where it's the result is what we have here. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you. So you've been offering degree apprenticeships for a few years now. So I'd love to know what's working well. What's the best thing about offering these apprenticeships?
Oh, I'm glad you started with that one, because I can tell you a couple of case studies of the opposite, but I'm sure we'll get there. What's worked well? I think, as I said, learning how long learning to measure the expectation, or to anticipate the expectation of generation of commercials. Like when does the commercial reward come through for the employer? Sounds really cold when you say it out loud, but ultimately it is an investment. As a small business, you don't have a huge pot of cash that you can give to charitable donations, but it doesn't mean you can't make a difference. And I think the work that we do on social mobility and social impact, a lot of this started with the apprenticeship program that we offer. And I think the stuff that's worked really well is that we've now got down a series of rotations where we've got training materials that are drawn up, refined. We refine them quite regularly as we see bits that do work, and as the market changes, we have to change how we do things. But we've got a good idea of in-house training materials. We've got events on the calendar which we know are good test runs and trial runs for our people. So as they start to learn and they need to be exposed to something that happens in the industry where a client might want them to tackle a project, or we might want them to tackle a project, we've got some really good external events which we use as trial runs. We've got good supervision networks in the business now. So we've gone from everything being managed on the apprenticeship level by just one person, me, at the start, to then we had a dedicated individual other than me. So there was me and one other that was sort of looking after apprentices. And now, as Claire said, it's fully integrated. So we've now got senior people working with apprentices alongside as colleagues and just doing that knowledge share in sort of matrix fashion, as opposed to someone up here is the line manager of the apprentices. And that was the breakthrough moment, I think, when we start to see, like we look at our delivery team, for instance, and Neve, one of the apprentices, is just on the work allocation system that we've got. When we have team meetings, she's just there alongside everybody else. And she puts her hand up and asks if she needs more detail on a brief or needs a bit of a steer as to the background of a strategy or a campaign. But most of the time, she just rolls with everyone else. So I think the best thing that we've been able to achieve is making sure the apprenticeships are fully integrated in the business. But that has come through evolution over 4 years. Not all of it easy either.
So talk to us about perhaps the challenges and what can potentially go wrong.
I think I think if people were more transparent about this as well, then you might win more employers over to embracing apprenticeships. It's always sold as a as something which is the right thing to do. But as I've said, it can really support your commercials if you do it right. But it requires the willingness, the commitment, and the dedication on the employer's side, as well as the investment. But you need that on the apprentices' side as well. One of the hardest things to admit for us is, because of how we recruit for our apprenticeships, we deliberately go looking to advertise in parts of the country which are underrepresented, parts of the country which perhaps thought, a career in the City of London is in financial marketing or financial journalism, absolutely not something that someone like me could do. We refuse to accept that, and what we do is therefore get out into the UK, across the UK, go visit sixth forms, colleges, and travel on a train with our little pop-up stand and say, well, this is what the career is. Here's how you get in. Here's how you get on.
Yeah.
Here's how you build a network, etc., etc. All good until you go through recruitment and you ask all the questions and you do the tests, and it's competitive. And every now and again, you get someone who you onboard and you think, oh, they're going to be great. And then they don't have the same amount of commitment to it. You can't do the work for them. You can't do the academics for them.
Yeah.
You can't do the work in the workplace for them. If they don't want to do it, it doesn't work out. We've been unlucky that's happened twice during the time that we've offered. We had one person who was who thought it was for them, and then very soon in, sort of I think about 12 to 16 weeks in, realised that you do have to have the academic commitment as well, and that person just wasn't interested in the learning aspect and realised that he wanted to just be in the workplace full time. And the other one was we had someone that we took all the way through to the very end, and at the very end, going through Gateway, turned around and went, it's lovely to have done this, but I want a career in a completely different industry, which was gutting. But again, you're working with young people, and there's not everybody knows exactly what they want their career to be, even by the age of 21. And that does happen. So all you can do is be as transparent as possible about what the program entails, what the commitment is, what the expectations are, but also, if you get through the program at the other side and you decide it's not for you, you have to get the best out of the apprentices while they are with you, because there is no guarantee they're going to be with you for life. They are young people. They are looking for the opportunity to get into the industry. You just have to give them the best you can and hope that they reward you with the best that they've got. That's it.
Yeah. And I suppose it's no different to hiring senior executives. Sometimes, no matter how great the interview process is, we get it wrong. and these candidates are humans. They change their mind. And and it's quite hard to build in things that mitigate that. And I suppose with the second example, Joe, you gave of the person that got right to the end of the programme and decided this wasn't the career for them, I bet the experience was still invaluable for them, and that's probably somebody who you've helped, and they're going to have an amazing career trajectory because of the investment you made in them. So it's really gutting, but I can still imagine a really positive impact for that person.
Yeah, I hope so. And also, that individual was a key part of the team at a period of the company where we were growing at a rapid pace, and we needed all hands to the pumps, and he absolutely did that. He rolled his sleeves up and got involved with everything. I guess again, another one I'll throw over to Claire, because I know she's got children, and one of them at the moment is looking at apprenticeships. To what extent, Claire, would you say that the schools sort of explain the apprenticeship programs? Do they know what the expectation is, would you say?
No, I've spoken to Jo about this several times, Jo. My daughter is really interested in apprenticeship schemes, and I found that the education system just doesn't give any information. It's very, very university driven. For the universities, the children will get time to visit the universities. They get time for uni days. They get careers advice on the courses they want to choose. My daughter's had endless support with her personal statements for university, and even though she doesn't want to go to university, she's been pushed to get that personal statement out and it written well, and all the help. As soon as she mentioned apprenticeships, there just was she didn't even know where to look. She didn't know where to sign up for. She had absolutely no idea and wasn't advised anywhere. It was just purely through a parents' evening. There was a company there that said, we help with apprenticeships. If you want to
Yeah.
sign up, it sounds exactly we can help you. And it was them that gave advice, and actually Joe who helped me where to look. So it's only by working for a company that's invested heavily into apprenticeships that as a parent I can help my child where to go to make a start for her. As parents, there's not enough information in the education system. There's not enough. It's too much of that push to go directly to university. And if you want to just go out and get a job, or you want to go apprenticeships, there's nothing. There's no help there, which is really disappointing, considering what we've spoken about today, the skills that they get from doing apprenticeships. And we've spoken about like the personal skills that you get from it, that you won't get just being at university. That they could really use this in the education system of how great this is, and get more employees to buy in. Get, like Joe says, Joe goes around and visits these. Get more people of these companies going out and visiting education, because it starts with them. Apprenticeship scheme won't work unless more 17 A-level or school leavers want to go and do it. If they're not educated about it, they won't go for it. That's, to me, where there is a gap with apprenticeships. It's educating them at that young age coming into it.
If a student doesn't know what's available to them, they can't follow the path. And I think you're right. I think that probably colleges push university because I'm guessing it looks good on the league tables. But I would have thought this was just as valuable an outcome of college for somebody to sign up for an apprenticeship or a degree apprenticeship. And I think, as we all know, university is not for everybody. And as to your point, Joe, around social mobility and diversity, equity and inclusion, not everybody can afford to get saddled with 50 grand's worth of debt.
And I think that's a huge thing now, that it's the debt side of things that is, children are sort of someone they can't physically able to do it, and then they worry about getting into that debt and that they're going to carry that debt. The cost of living now is so more expensive than ever, so going out into the work world with that debt after 3 years is a huge impact. And I think it's funny for young people, for apprenticeships used to be, years ago, it used to be a trade, so it used to be like an electrical apprenticeship or a plumbing. It was very stereotyped to them. People didn't know about it in the world of financial services and insurance. You didn't know about apprenticeships as much in them worlds. And that is where I've noticed, talking for my daughter and a lot of her friendship circles, they had no idea you could go into those areas. When I mentioned apprenticeship, the first thing one of them said was, I don't want to go and build a house. And I said, it's got nothing to do with that. And they said, well, I don't want to do electrical or plumbing. I said, you don't. But that's the only thing at schools now, because of part of their or colleges, when they're doing electrical, you have to find your own apprenticeship to then carry on your education. There isn't any of that that's offered for outside of that.
I, for anyone who's watching this, I think an ask from the employer side, something I'm really keen to see, that sort of shifts the dial a bit on people that consider it to be attractive to do an apprenticeship. So obviously we've been an employer of degree apprenticeships for 4 years now, as I say. But I'd like to see more work done, not just on the standards that exist for degree apprenticeships, because I've seen that they've broadened significantly in that time, but also on higher apprenticeships. So those offered at sort of level 4, level 5, where you can get someone who comes through, they get fully qualified at the equivalent of foundation degree level, so the second year of an undergraduate degree, for instance, or an HND as it used to be offered, sort of uniquely almost. But we could do something so much more, where there was a broad apprenticeship standard for that to begin with, and then there are pathways off of that for a top up, because this will prevent that, oh, actually I don't want to be in this area, I want to be over here. But also it wouldn't put quite so much pressure on employers to have what we've had to develop with the rotation, so that people get that choice at the end of year 2. It would be automatic, because they come in on a higher, but then having got their level 5 at higher apprenticeship level, you can still offer degree apprenticeship, but then you can specialise in year 3. And it means you'd be able to
Yeah.
offer a generalist sort of program for the first 2 years that give them experience in every part of the business that isn't mapped to a specific line
Yeah.
of KSBs. And then in the final year, then they can start to specialise. Because remember, you're dealing most of the time with young people or perhaps returners who are sort of
Yeah.
dipping their toe in the water and going, "Is this for me? I don't know." You know, I think that
Yeah.
there's a lot more that needs to be done to broaden this out. And I still feel
Yeah.
that we're just at the start of that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to ask, so you mentioned it with the first example of when things don't work out, but I'm wondering what happens in the scenario where somebody perhaps thinks it is working out, but you don't feel the same. So maybe there's a performance issue or something. You know, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, that one we haven't encountered. So
Yeah.
we've been quite lucky. But I guess if there's a difference of opinion, it's quite easy to see on the apprenticeship route because you have the academic objectives. So obviously you still have to pass at the same level as you would do at university. So the grade
Yeah.
boundaries are the same. You still have typically the 40% pass as the absolute basic. You have the
Yeah.
50 to 60% for a 2-2, 60 to 70 for a 2-1, 70 plus for a first on the academics.
Yeah.
But also when you go through Gateway and you have your endpoint assessment on the relevant chartered or trade body that's doing the professional assessment as well, they will also have a pass or a distinction set of boundaries. So they give their assessment as well. That typically happens at the end. But then you've got on the job as well. And that's the role of the HR manager or the line manager to make sure they're having regular one-to-ones, to make sure they're doing the portfolio mapping. So we sit down every 6 months and have a catch up with the apprenticeships and go through the portfolios and say, let's go through all of the work that you've done that you've been really proud of over the past 6 months and map that to your KSBs. So we know you're going to have enough to get through.
Yeah.
If the work is missing, if the academics are missing, or the professional or the work required for the professional accreditation is missing, then you just look at the data. There's no nuance. There's no, I felt this and you felt that. Should we meet in the middle? It's, you either did it or you didn't. It's really easy with apprenticeships. And I think that's a difference to even like full-timers. Like we don't enjoy that. It's purely work-based for us. But there's so many metrics in apprenticeships that it's easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds good. Thank you. What's been the biggest surprise on your apprenticeship journey?
Oh, that's a big question. I think it's the innovation that apprentices bring. When I started to think about apprenticeships, and then I remember offering the first one, I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe it was like Claire's daughter and Claire's daughter's friends, where they're like, "Oh, you're going to build a house." But maybe I was expecting, I don't know, someone to come in who knew nothing and wasn't going to absorb the market around them and was just going to wait to be told everything. That wasn't what transpired at all. It's these young people, particularly because they're the ones that we've had experience with predominantly, have come in, and once within a few weeks they are sparking with ideas. Have you thought about this? I've just had a conversation with this person. They told me this, and they're your eyes and the ears in the external market, and they are bringing in information which is useful in a multitude of ways, and they're doing it through a completely different lens. As I look at things in the market, I've been I've obviously been influenced by my years in industry, so I've got preconceptions about everything that I consume in terms of market intelligence and market information. They don't have it the same way, and they also see opportunities that I miss. Claire, I mean, you've been in the meetings where we've had the apprentices sort of giving ideas. Is that your read of it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. They come with fresh ideas that I think when you've been in the industry for a long time, they come in new with stuff. Not that I'm not saying we're stale, but they do. It's a fresh perspective of a young person. it's a fresh perspective coming in from them. And also what I think, Jo, what I've noticed since I've been here with Apprenticeship, they're so driven.
Yeah.
They're so driven of what they want to do, and also they're given tasks to do, and they're like, can I do this as well? And they offer ideas and they offer extra help, and I can take that from you. How you with our colleagues would take work and help you do stuff, they're offering it.
Yeah.
Which I've been really surprised at how much they can do. They've been brilliant.
Yeah. I think the what's the word? The drive, as you say, the want to be a part of commercial success, it's enormous.
Yeah. And I've got to ask again, kind of looking back on this apprenticeship journey, what's the proudest moment?
Well, there's been a few. I think even though the individual I spoke about that didn't work out decided to have a change of career at the end of it, watching him go through and pass those exams. So he was on an accounting pathway, and those exams are tough. They are hard exams.
Yeah.
And he was going through, and the workbooks are enormous alone. And it was every time he passed one, I'd be like, that's in itself, that's a time commitment to getting through that.
Yeah.
And I remember when he'd passed the penultimate exam, he'd got the collection. And I think it was at that point that I became aware of what would have been possible for him, because obviously he's taken that decision to go to a different pathway. But for whatever reason, I started noticing job ads that were coming up on Reed and LinkedIn for people who had qualified with this qualification. And I was like, oh, wow, the selection of careers possible from having that were vast. And that certainly wasn't in my mind at the start of the apprenticeship. But by the end of it, I was really proud that that's the opportunity that people get as a result of our program. And I think if you look at Neve and Ella, the two colleagues that we've got who are coming up to Gateway now and the endpoint assessment, they are fully fledged marketers, content marketers. They've got a contact book, they've got a skill set. I think the pride comes from knowing that their careers are set up now. They've got the skills down, and you've got to keep developing and keep building. But you almost feel sort of, I sounds a bit OTT, but you feel a bit parental about it, because you've worked with them for that long and you've seen them transform during that period.
Yeah. Well, having a real impact, and as you say, that person will still have to continue to learn and develop, but they've got solid foundations now, and that will bear fruit forever for them. Yeah. So for anyone out there thinking they might like to consider degree apprenticeships or apprenticeships more broadly for their organisation, I guess, what advice would you give to them? And I'd also like to ask, as part of that question, how they should work to collaborate with the educational provider.
Well, I'll let Claire take the educational provider one, because she is in the day-to-day thick of it, of where there's a need for skills in our sort of business. Yeah. But I think from my perspective, I'd say I think the most valuable thing that we did at the start was to work with with the educational institutions to understand what it was they offered and how they delivered their programs, because they're not all the same. They might have the same apprentice standard and the same degree at the end of it, but the way they deliver it is different. So some are block release, some are 1 day a week, some scatter the hours around the week, some are remote only, and you do it sort of any time. There is so many different approaches to achieve the same university outcome and the same professional qualification, that it does need to be done at the start. We've worked with some providers, LSBU, who are on this podcast series with us. ARU have been fantastic as well. We've previously worked with Middlesex University, BPP. There's so many different providers. Salford we've used as a provider before. There's loads to choose from, but you have to understand how they're going to deliver, because only then can you structure your apprentices' working week around what their educational needs are. And as I said, I'll ask Claire for where you think the skills are needed in terms of training for in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that the schools, for a start, need educating on these institutions, what's available and what they can do. I think that's the first thing is, as I say, this open day, there was one company there. There was nobody else there, yet there's lots of different people from different universities. And I noticed that schools also case study the different universities and what people have achieved. There's no case studies of achievements from apprenticeships. If children can see how well people have done, like I'm now doing this and I started my apprenticeship here, follow someone's path, that their career path, it started from being an apprenticeship. I don't think I've seen that anywhere, actually. That in fact, I've not seen that at all. If there was more things like that in the education, that these education institutions were following and were going into these schools, going into these secondary schools, going into these colleges and letting them know, having careers days of going out to the different, as I say, not just the trade, going out to investment banks, going out to more insurance company, going out to the world and learning about it, having a day of learning about this side of things. I think it's spreading the word of what you can achieve by doing an apprenticeship. People say, well, I got a degree in this. When someone said to my daughter, well, I got a degree in this and this was my career, she presumed they'd gone to university. She never presumed that there was an apprenticeship and that's how they got their degree. And that is the difference. It's educating. Whenever someone says a degree, you instantly go, what university did you go to? Not that you came through an apprenticeship scheme.
If we're totally blue sky thinking and we're in a world where everyone knows what apprenticeships are and the schools understand and we understand, I think the other thing which I would recommend, and I understand that people are time poor in organisations, but let's say particularly larger organisations, let's say the biggest banks in the world, for example, or non-financial businesses, huge supermarket groups, FMCG suppliers, pharmaceuticals, the business leaders in those companies, I would strongly urge to undertake a senior level apprenticeship themselves, because they will begin to get familiar with the process. They will understand the knowledge, skills and behaviours. They will understand the professional requirement at the end, the endpoint assessment, how the professional body works as well alongside the university or educational institution. And they will understand better how to integrate these programs into their own workplace. One of the things that I was very much on the fence about doing was further learning, but for personal reasons, I felt that I needed to do it. And having gone through an apprentice program myself at the same time as some of our initial apprenticeships, I started to see the problems and why it wasn't possible and why we could deliver it better. And it's because you actually had to do it yourself. And I appreciate that. Again, there'll be people that go, I haven't got the time for that. It doesn't take up huge amounts of time, particularly in a large business. They can do without you for a couple of hours here and there. But the reward in terms of being able to nurture the people coming through the apprenticeships commercially for the business will be much, much greater if you understand how these programs integrate with your business day to day.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Can we include a link to a website or a resource where people can find out more?
Absolutely. So I know we're recording a few weeks out, but at the time this is published, we will be announcing the launch of our intake for the 2024 Rhotic Media Apprenticeship, which on the Rhotic Media website, you'll be able to go to the careers page. And on there, it talks about how we work with everybody in the business. But in the listings, you'll see Degree Apprenticeship, and you can click through and it gives you all the details of our programme, and also explains how we work with the educational institutions as well.
And for employers who are thinking they might like to get on board with this, or for schools who are listening and realise they need to find out more, is there a central place where we could direct them?
Yeah, in the same way as universities, schools and colleges will be familiar with dealing with UCAS for universities, UCAS also has a whole apprenticeship site which advertises apprenticeships. So you can see the apprenticeships that are available on there. Not all
Okay.
apprenticeships are on there for reasons I could go into, but I won't on this podcast. But there's also various government sites that you can go as well. If you Google UK government degree apprenticeships, you can find out more about them that way.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right. So as we move towards wrapping up, what would you like to share with the audience before we go?
I think a sort of summary is obviously if you're a young person or a returner who's looking to do a degree apprenticeship, I would say absolutely look into it. They are terrific, and it gives you an entirely different experience. If you think you're ready for the world of work, this is what you need to do. You'll come away with something that's invaluable. I think if you're an employer that's on the fence, give it a try with just a small cohort to begin with, even one person. And anyone else who's just sort of vaguely intrigued for themselves personally, if you are employed by a large organisation, speak to your HR team and see how they're spending the levy for degree apprenticeships at the moment. It might be that there's money ring fenced just sitting there for you to do another qualification. And if you're in a hiring position, considering maybe next time when you're hiring junior talent to do so through a junior apprenticeship. And then, Claire, from a sort of advice to schools from a parental perspective, what would you say?
Yeah, I would just say for any in the education sector, I think that you need to look into the apprenticeship schemes and educating the children onto what's available, what's out there for them, and give them more choices of what they can do. And as a parent, go to the advice that Joe has just said, just mirroring what he has said. There's stuff out there, there's websites out there that you can look at, that you can join on, and you can see all the different types of apprenticeship schemes that are there, all the different industries that you can go into. But get online and have a look at this stuff, because that's exactly what I did from Joe's advice and found lots of different opportunities for my own child. So yeah, get out and look. But it would be easier if the schools helped them to do that, because I know not all parents have the time, and it is putting in the time to do it for your child, and it would be better if the schools could help them as well.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm hearing is not only is it the right thing to do, it is priceless and invaluable experience for the apprentices, and it actually has a really positive impact on organisations too. So what's not to like? All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your insights. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.